Hi, I'm here with Judy Douglas, who is visiting Austin for a few days, and most of you know who Judy is. She's on staff with Crew, as well as the Director of Women's Resources with Crew, and is a writer and speaker. She talks to people all over the world, and just with her background and experiences, I thought it would be cool to just ask her a question that might help us wherever we're at. And my question for her at this point today is, with our grown children, when we're having challenges with them, do you have any insights or thoughts or encouragement for us?
Well, I have three great grown children, and I will say first, sometimes the challenge is with the in-laws. When your children are married, I had a tendency to want to give instructions to my sons-in-law, and I found out I couldn't do that. And so that's a challenge, and to learn to keep my mouth shut and to pray, and I had a really wonderful reward. Something I was praying for one of them, God did without my help. And so I was grateful. But I know a lot about challenges with grown children because my son didn't really start to get at a good place in his life till he was 27 or so. And so we went through a lot of years of his alcoholism and a failed marriage and a lot of bad decisions, loss of job, trying to figure out his life and learning how to be there for him and encourage him, but he still had to learn to do these things on himself. And so for him, there were extenuating circumstances because his birth mother was on drugs and alcohol, and that affected his brain some. So we had to learn to discern when we needed to give grace because some of his actions were not choices as much as the result of the messed up brain that he had, but a lot of them were choices. And so we had to learn to ask questions and listen a lot, often to let him come to us. He would come when he had needs, mainly money, but sometimes we needed to decide it was right to be helpful, and other times it was right to say, we'll pray for you, blessings on you. But the most important thing that we found is a lot of times people are said, well, you have to have the boundaries, and they're appropriate. But sometimes the boundaries cause people to give resistance to those people they love, and cut them off almost. I've heard people say, well, if he does that again, we're cutting him off. We want nothing more to do with him. And I'm like, no. Remember Luke 15. Remember the father whose grown son said, give me my inheritance, and he runs off with it and loses it all and lives a sinful life, and he comes to his senses and he comes home. And the tendency might be to say, well, all right, let's talk about the consequences of what you've done, and let's make sure that you understand if you come back, you have to do this and this and this. Now, that conversation might happen later, but the first conversation needs to be, we are so glad to see you. We love you and we've missed you, and we would welcome them with wide open arms, just as the Father did. And just as the Father said, let's celebrate that you're back. Later, I bet the Father had some conversations about, now here's how you need to live, and this is what is necessary. But grace and love are what will win them and draw them back into our hearts and us into their hearts, much more than our tough love kind of attitude that says, well, you've blown it, and if you want back, here's what you have to do. And people don't always agree with me on this, but I think it's what Jesus has modeled. It's what he talked about in Luke 15. The Father says, welcome, come back. We're so grateful that you're back. And then we talk about the realities of how life has to go on. And there are realities that has to do, but love and grace just accomplish so much more almost every time. In Romans 2, Jesus said that it's people are won back to him. They're wooed to God by his loving kindness. And so I think that should be our step forward is the love and grace and kindness to them. And then the working out of realities of how you go forward. But not pushing them away or resisting them. They're coming back. And will they be sincere every time? No. Will they blow it sometimes? Sure. But, that's just us and the Lord.
Yeah.
And so
I appreciate that. Yeah.
we desire to act like the Lord. And when I think of how God has responded to me every time I have come and said, I blew it again, that was wrong, I'm sorry, he says, mercy and grace, welcome.
Yeah.
So,
well, I appreciate that because we don't hear that much about grown children and parenting grown children and the challenges. So I think it's really encouraging, especially Grace, because it's very easy to want to give advice and, like you say, boundaries or rules. And so, yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.